So he stabs, I step in the same way. Now my hand slides down, and where are we at?
I've been teaching fighting techniques to government agencies for more than 15 years, including the US Marines, US Marshals, US SWAT teams, and US Navy SEALs.
He's gonna stab me. I go here, and then I go here, and then I could go here or here.
Nearly all the techniques I teach are banned. I was sparring with a future heavyweight champion and tore ligaments in both of my knees. Unable to teach or train for at least 6 months, I spent more than 1,000 hours studying peer-reviewed science on. McGregor was a big meat eater.
It's steaks every day for me. Steaks for breakfast, steaks for lunch, steaks for brunch, grass-fed.
Diaz was on a plant-based diet. Conor McGregor, the Vegas odds makers had Diaz as the 4-to-1 underdog.
He caught him again with a right hook. And another left. And again with a combination. Diaz trying to finish with a submission. He's got it. That's it. He's got the choke. Diaz. He's got it. He's done it. Diaz beats Conor McGregor. Oh, my goodness. Nate Diaz, you just shook up the world. How's that feel?
Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
Scott built his career running extreme distances over brutal terrain, conquering the sport's most prestigious races, including the Badwater Ultramarathon, 135 miles through California's Death Valley, with temperatures reaching 130 degrees.
I was training for the Western States 100-mile race, which is like the Super Bowl of ultramarathon racing. And that's when I was transitioning to a plant-based diet. I remember doubting myself, even up to a week before the race, like maybe I should have eaten meat. But I led that race from start to finish and won it for 7 years in a row. And there was no question that the plant-based diet was fueling my victories.
What I found in the locker room was some pretty outdated ideas about nutrition. You would go to a pre-game dinner with the football team and you would see this spread. There would be steak and chicken, very much protein-oriented, because their perception was that the protein is what sustains their energy. But in fact, that's not the case. The actual energy for exercise comes mainly from carbohydrates in the form of glycogen that we store in our muscles.
As early as 1908, plant-based athletes were starting to claim their first Olympic golds.
Are you still sticking to your vegetarian diet, Mary?
Very rigidly, yes.
And do you find that's a benefit to you, do you?
Greatly, or I wouldn't do it.
Winning the gold medal. Lewis gets it, and it's a new world record as well.
I changed my diet to a vegan diet, and I set all of my personal bests at 30 years old.
The oldest man ever to win a world or Olympic men's.
And there were current Olympians too. Morgan Mitchell is the 2-time Australian 400-meter champion.
Here comes Morgan Mitchell. Champion, this is very, very fast.
It's tough, the 400, I won't lie. The first 200 is pure speed, and then the last 200, it shows who's got that speed endurance training in their legs. And obviously the last 50, you've just got to pray because lactic is hitting hard. You need to be able to hold that endurance.
She also represented Australia at the 2016 Summer Olympics.
A lot of people had doubted me when I first became vegan, but my energy levels increased incredibly. And my iron, my B12, everything that people said would become deficient were amazing. I thought, I'm going to make sure I'm beating them all on the track.
Dotsie Bausch, an 8-time USA national cycling champion and 2-time Pan American gold.
I grew up in Kentucky, so that's the land of casseroles and barbecue and meat. So when I transitioned over to an entirely plant-based diet, I wasn't sure if I was gonna survive. And I actually became like a machine. I got up from being able to move about 300 pounds on the inverted leg sled to moving 585 pounds, 60 reps.
All that protein that you get when you eat a steak or a hamburger, where did it come from? It came from the plants that the cow ate.
I was surprised to learn that all protein originates in plants. Cows, pigs, and chickens, it turns out, are just the middlemen. In fact, the largest study to compare the nutrient intake of meat eaters with plant eaters showed that the average plant eater not only gets enough protein, but 70% more than they need. Even meat eaters like me get roughly half of their protein from plants. But athletes need 1 cup of cooked lentils or a peanut butter sandwich has about as much protein as 3 ounces of beef or 3 large eggs. But what about the quality of the protein? I'd always heard that plant-based protein was inferior.
Proteins are strings of amino acids, and there's some amino acids our bodies can't make. Those are the essential amino acids. So we have to get them from food. And one of the arguments about animal-based proteins being superior is that plant-based proteins aren't complete, so you're not going to get all the amino acids. And that's a fallacy as well.
Again, I was surprised to discover that every single plant contains all the essential amino acids in varying proportions.
When I made the switch to a plant-based diet, they were like, I don't know how you're gonna lift that much weight, and you're not gonna be eating anything, you're just gonna eat grass, like how you gonna be strong? I qualified for my 3rd Olympic team, you know what I'm saying? I broke 2 American records. I won the Pan Am Games. I was like, man, like I think I should have done this a long while ago. Like, why didn't I research this before?
Patrick is one of the strongest men on the planet, with multiple world records, including the front hold, the keg lift, and the log lift. How could one of the world's strongest men be so powerful, eating only plants? No meat, no milk, no eggs.
How could you get as strong as an ox without eating any meat? And my answer was, have you ever seen an ox eating meat? Meat in 2005, up to that time, I was 105 kilo. And now I'm 130 kilos. Also at the same time, I set like 4 world records. So when I stopped eating meat, I got stronger and bigger.
When I met Patrick, he was training to break the world record for the heaviest weight ever carried by a human being. To break that record, Patrick would have to carry 1,224 pounds. That's the weight of a horse, a distance of 33 feet. The only plant-based fighter out there.
I stopped eating meat probably like around the end of 2012. I grew up not even knowing about half of these other vegetables. Asparagus to me just came out like 5 years ago. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, as a kid, it was like, asparagus, we ain't never see that. I'm like, what's that?
Bryant Jennings is a heavyweight title contender, best known for going the distance with Vladimir Klitschko, one of the greatest boxing champions of all time.
This is a plant burrito. This is a meat burrito. Look at the difference it makes in what circulates in your bloodstream.
Cloudy.
Cloudy. And that's on top is the fat circulating in your blood from the meat burrito.
Gotcha.
Griff, you're the vegan. Here's your blood from today and your blood from yesterday. Nice and clear, both of them.
So the fat from the avocado doesn't have that kind of effect?
That's right. Kenny, you're the fried chicken guy. You want to see your chicken? There it is.
Yeah, it's pretty gross to see.
In animal products, you're getting protein packaged with inflammatory molecules like Nu-5GC, endotoxins, and heme iron. When we consume animal products, it also changes the microbiome, the bacteria that live in our gut. And the bacterial species that have been shown to promote inflammation overgrow and begin to produce inflammatory mediators like TMAO.
The study that showed that a single hamburger impairs blood flow also showed that it can increase measures of inflammation by 70%. In the arteries, inflammation reduces blood flow. In muscles and joints, it can increase soreness and delay recovery.
In plant-based protein, you're getting protein that's packaged with antioxidants, phytochemicals, minerals, and vitamins that are going to reduce inflammation, optimize the microbiome, optimize blood supply, and optimize your body's performance.
The antioxidants Dr. Stoll was talking about are found almost entirely in plants, which have, on average, 64 times the antioxidant content of animal foods. Even iceberg lettuce has more antioxidants than salmon or eggs. As a result, switching to a plant-based diet can help reduce measures of inflammation by 29% in just 3 weeks.
I was about ready to retire, as I should have been, because I'm like 35 at that time. But I just kept getting better, and so they had to take me to the Olympics on the Olympic podium. I'm still the oldest person male or female, to even go to the Olympic Games in my...
I was reading the research and seeing that a plant-based diet could be beneficial specifically for recovery. And so I started incorporating it, and I started seeing really good results with it. I was recovering better. I wasn't getting as sore. I was a lot less swollen. Basically, to confirm what I was feeling, I got my blood tested. 6 months after being on the diet, all of my markers were down, my blood pressure, my cholesterol. But the main thing I was looking at was the inflammation marker in your blood, and mine was almost obsolete. It wasn't there anymore.
A whole food plant-based diet is going to optimize the growth of blood vessels into damaged tissue. It's going to lay down new tissue in tendons and muscles.
Not just red meat, not just chicken, not just eggs, not just milk. It's the ingestion of any animal protein. At that moment in time, a process begins at a chemical level inside the body.
When the protein found in animal foods is cooked, preserved, or even just digested by our gut bacteria, highly inflammatory compounds are formed that corrode our cardiovascular system. This helps explain why people who get all of their protein from plants reduce their risk of heart disease by 55%. It would also help explain why the only diet that has ever been shown to actually reverse heart disease is a plant-based. I've been on a plant-based diet for almost 10 years. Lou is 60 years old, not far off my father's age.
Most guys my age can keep up with the grandchildren. My grandchildren can't keep up with me. When I went from an animal-based diet to a plant-based diet, my blood pressure went down to like 110/70. My heart rate, sometimes it's been under 50, like 48, 47. I'm more focused, I'm more relaxed, and I noticed that I have a lot more energy because of the plant-based diet. Come on, man, come on. People in their 20s, they come in here. We do a workout. I sustain the workout a lot easier than they do. We can come in here and do 800. Listen to what I just said. 800 kettlebell swings and snatches in one workout. They can't make it. I'm not kidding you. They can't hang, man, I'm telling you. They can't hang.
So we start going more in a direction of the vegetarian kind of a diet. Now with doing it the right way, with the right spices, all of a sudden, I love it much more than the meat. And, you know, the cholesterol went down to around 109. It was the lowest that it ever was in my entire life, at almost 69.
We have many adaptations to plant consumption. We have longer digestive tracts than do carnivores, and this allows humans to digest plants and fibers that require longer processing time. We also lack the ability to produce our own vitamin C. Vitamin C is found in plants, so the fact that we cannot make our own indicates just how reliant upon plants we actually are. This is why we have trichromatic vision. This is very different from carnivores, which have dichromatic vision. We can see more colors, and this is very important, especially if you need to find fresh, ripe fruit.
Made sense. The reason an animal-based diet isn't good for us is because our bodies aren't built for it. It's simply the wrong type of fuel. The only thing that didn't really fit was B12, an important vitamin that everyone kept warning me you could only get from animal foods. It turns out that B12 isn't made by animals after all. It's made by bacteria that these animals consume in the soil and water. Just like with protein, animals are only the middlemen. Before industrial farming, farm animals and humans could get B12 by eating traces of dirt on plant foods or by drinking water from rivers or streams. But now, because pesticides, antibiotics, and chlorine kill the bacteria that produce this vitamin, even farm animals have to be given B12 supplements. And up to 39% of people tested, including meat eaters, are low in B12. As a result, the best way for humans to get enough B12, whether they eat animal foods or not, is simply to take a supplement.
You've got 20 to 30 of them saying, hey, well, I heard that soy raises estrogen levels. Well, that's not the case.
Soy, it turns out, contains phytoestrogens, compounds that look like estrogens but can actually have the opposite effect, blocking some of our body's estrogen receptors and preventing real dietary sources of estrogen from taking hold. The foods that contain real estrogens are animal foods, like chicken, eggs, and dairy, which can have a significant impact on our hormone levels. Simply drinking cow's milk can increase a man's estrogen levels by 26% in just 1 hour, while dropping their testosterone levels by 18%. Another hormone strongly connected to diet is cortisol, a stress hormone linked to reduced muscle mass and increased body fat. Research has shown that people who replace animal foods with high-carbohydrate plant foods experience an average drop in cortisol levels of 27%. 6 months into my new diet, my strength, endurance, and recovery were better than ever. My dad's health was on the mend. Even my wife and kids were on board. But I was also pissed off. Why didn't everyone know about this?
About 3/4 of all the agricultural land in the world is used for livestock production, and it imposes a huge cost on biodiversity. And what is the single biggest source of habitat destruction? It's the livestock sector.
Meat, dairy, egg, and fish farming use 83% of the world's farmland, yet provide only 18% of the world's calories. The reason livestock require so much land is because, once again, animals are just the middlemen, consuming, on average, 6 times more protein than they produce. With more than 70 billion animals consumed globally each year, growing animal feed requires vast amounts of land, making it one of the leading drivers of deforestation. Nearly 50 times more waste per year than its entire human population, polluting rivers, lakes, and groundwater all across the country.
The livestock sector is responsible for 15% of global man-made emissions. So to put that in perspective, that's about the same as all the emissions from all the forms of transport in the world, all the planes, trains, cars, vans, and ships, all added up.
Agriculture is not only the biggest culprit threatening the future for humanity on Earth, it is also the biggest and most important silver bullet to a solution.
In the US, where meat consumption is 3 times the global average, shifting away from an animal-based diet would reduce agricultural emissions by up to 73% and save 1 million liters of water per person per year. Globally, this shift would free up a total area of land the size of Africa, taking pressure off many of the world's most endangered ecosystems and species.
50 years ago, no one talked about, hey, maybe you should just get your protein from vegetables. But now, there's many athletes, professional athletes in all kinds of different sports that have done extremely well staying away from animal foods.